Hello and welcome to the first episode of Diary of a New Dungeon Master. Tonight we are going to be continuing on world building a city that I'm currently working on in readiness for my new campaign that starts in January. So I'm going to be continuing to use a system called World Anvil, which is an absolutely outstanding piece of kit with lots and lots of different features before you even have to pay a single penny. If you haven't seen it already or heard of it, please go check it out, worldanvil.com. But they are really good. You should really check them out. So we're going to get straight into it. But just on the topic of World Anvil, might as well show you a bit of a trailer, show you what you're missing, and then we'll get straight into it. And here we are. So, as I say, we are going to be working on a city that I'm working on called Varcon. So, just to kind of give you a bit of a rundown first of all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what the article itself actually looks like on my World Anvil page. So we are in the country of Morbia as well. There's still a lot I need to work on in terms of Morbia, but I'm just going from small little area first. I'm going to work my way out. So Varcon is the first place that I'm going for. As I say, this is going to be the starting area for my new campaign. So Varcon itself, it is run by a council of elected politicians. Now, how far that reach goes for the council, how far that jurisdiction is, I'm not 100% sure on just yet, but I can tell you that Varcon is not the capital city of Morbia. The capital city is actually a few miles north, which is the Four Spires. Unfortunate timing, I came up with the Four Spires literally at the point that Campaign 3 of Critical Role came out. So, honest, I haven't stolen the idea from Matt Mercer, we just kind of came up with it at exactly the same time. So that's the capital city, but we'll be coming back to that later on, because my players will undoubtedly end up there at some point. So with Varcon then, obviously you've got the main page here, but just kind of give you a rundown. Governed by a council of elected politicians. They do all have their own certain jobs. So if I use Game of Thrones as an example, you know, the council, the King's Council, you've got the Master of Coin, the Master of Whispers, that kind of thing. It's a similar idea, they've just all got their little bits to do, keep the city running like an well-oiled machine, keep the trade routes moving, etc. Now, Varcon itself, it is a seriously important part of Morbia. It's what I refer to as a gateway. What I mean by that is most of the trade for Morbia, I do say most, not all, does come through the port of Varcon. So most of the trade comes in through the port, makes its way through the city, whether that's through the dockside market, through the different shops that are in there, the market in the northern section of the city, and then eventually it will make it onto the main road out of the city. Now this main road, it is really an important road. It is the start of one of the major trade routes. That road will head north about, I'd say about 4 or 5 miles-ish, and then it will branch off into 4 or 5 different roads. And they are your main trade routes, and that's when it will start going to all different places, whether it's going north to Estumia, you know, kind of northeastern towards the other country up there that I forget the name of off the top of my head, but it will all split off into its various different routes. So the city, because of that, the city itself is a bustling place, whether that's in the dockside market, in the main market, wherever. You're bound to see quite a few people. Now, Varcon isn't a massive city. You know, I'd say it's kind of a medium-sized city. Can still hold its own, but it's not a massive one. It is split into your four districts. So you have got the residence sanctum, your trade quarter, parkside, and your martial quarter. Okay, so going clockwise from 6 o'clock, you've got resident. North western section is your trade quarter. Northeast is your parkside, and then your southeast is your martial quarter. I mean, just off the names alone, you can probably guess which part deals with what. You've got your resident sanctum, which is mainly your housing estates. A couple of odd shops in there, but not very many. You've then got your trade quarter, which incorporates the market, as well as your main hub for shops, whether that's blacksmiths, tanners, bakers, you know, tailors, anything like that. You'll find it in the trade quarter. Parkside is, I suppose, if we're putting it in simple terms, it's definitely your more expensive area. You know, it's still another residential section of the city, but it's quite a rich place. You know, if you've got money, that's where you'll end up. Got some nice park area over there. This is kind of like your high class section. And that's not to mean that the residential sanctum isn't, you know, is anything less poor or anything like that. It's just the parkside is your wealthy. You're really, really wealthy. That's where they would be. You've then got your martial quarter, which houses the temple. It houses 2 barracks, and it does also house the centre of the Varconian government. Okay. So they actually run out of a refurbished mansion, and not only is it refurbished, it's been expanded on, and it's this house, this building, that is actually the epicenter of where the city of Varcon came from. And it's that kind of history that we're going to work on today. That's one of the points I want to cover off today. You will see all kinds of sorts of shops, stores, people through there. You've got your temple of Theme. So Theme is actually a homebrew goddess. So Theme, I want to kind of touch on who she is, but I don't want to go too deep into it just yet, because there's still a little bit of things I need to figure out with my homebrew pantheon. But going to expand on the temple a little bit, Varcon Manor, and I also want to have a look at the council as well, and the taverns and the shops. I've kind of got an idea of where I'm going to go with all of this, but yeah, today's video is just going through that. So now that I've talked your head off for about 10 minutes explaining everything, let's get to it. So I'm just going to hop back over to my edit page, and we are going to go down here. So one of the first things I want to cover off today is the Manor House. Okay. Now, the Manor House is, as I say, it's where the main place where the council actually run their business from. As I say, they do have their separate jobs. They all have jobs that they deal with and themselves. So Varcon city was created. Sorry, I will repeat that. Formed from a simple homestead and has expanded over the years to bustling gateway it is today. So my kind of idea with Varcon and this homestead that I talk about is literally, you know, a good, say about 200 years, 150, 200 years ago, kind of. I might tweak that number a bit. But essentially this started as a large house in the middle of nowhere. Okay? And in there you had this wizened old man. You know, if you saw him, it was like typical kind of wizardy look, you know, long white beard, pointy hat, that kind of thing. So old wizard looking after this house. Unfortunately, he was growing old in age. You know, he was about 70, so well, late 70s, early 80s at this point, so getting on in his years. Not to say that he needed to be underestimated, but definitely getting older. Now, what he wanted to do is to offer out the house as a place for people to stay, but not just as like a you know, travelling inn or whatever, but also for them to settle down, to almost as a retreat, so to speak. So, you know, when the travellers, they come, they take one of the rooms. I'm going to say, I'm going to put it in while I'm talking, I'll say about 12 rooms. There's spare 2 rooms. So out of those 12 rooms, pick one, rent it out for a couple of days, you know, really cheap rate. And during that time, the grounds of the mansion, well, the homestead, the basement, pretty much anywhere they wanted, they could sit down, relax, or they could utilise the tools and materials that he had lying around to work on their trade. So he did have his own forge, did have his own loom, etc. So your kind of basic trades, anyone in that vocation or trying to get into that vocation, this was the perfect place for them to come, because it was away from everybody else. They could spend hours, days, weeks, however long, spend a little bit of gold, stay at this house out in the middle of sticks, and just hammer home their work. You know, whatever designs they've been working on, whatever material, you know, specs that they've been working on. This was the place that they could go, away from everybody else, just get on with it. That's kind of where I wanted to go with it. Okay. So from simple homestead and expanded the years to the bustling gateway today. The homestead that it started out as was owned by an older gentleman by the name of I don't know why I went with Cor, but I'm going to roll with it. Cormeg surname. What surname could I go for? Cormeg Permin. Not sure where that name's come from, but we're going to roll with it. Old gentleman by the name of Cormeg Permint, who was getting on into his later years. I know this might not necessarily make sense, but I can finish up all the editing and stuff later. By the name of Cormeg Permint, that's where it's come from. Who was getting on in his later years. He opened up his home that had 12 bedrooms, sorry, so 12 rooms that he turned into comfortable bedrooms. Okay? I'm not going to say that they were poor, but I'm not going to say they were wealthy. They were comfortable, into comfortable bedrooms with mediocre decor. This was not a poor homestead, to say the least, but certainly not the creature comforts the wealthy would seek. Okay, so it was average. It is really where I'm going with this. Okay, this was a place where trades people could come to get away and focus on their own projects. The rent was cheap, and a couple of gold pieces. Now I'm going to change that, and a few gold pieces could see you here for a number of days. You know, the kind of thing I'm going for is that Cormac, again, he wasn't overly rich, but he got a little bit of a small fortune tucked away. In fact, I'm going to make a note here as well. So Cormac, small fortune tucked away, and as he had no living heirs, he wanted to make the most of the coin he had. Okay, the incoming gold just meant that his fortune was stable, if that makes sense. Essentially, it just means that although this small fortune that he got would see them through for a number of months, if he was to offer free rooms, for example, it would see them through for a few months. But because this house was out in the sticks, the only kind of real expense that he really had was the food. So come away to focus on their own projects. Rent was cheap, a few gold pieces could see her for a number of days. It was perfect treat to get away and focus on the projects. I'm going to call them patrons. Patrons had been in the vacation for years or just starting out. Cormac's property was well equipped for those interested. Blacksmithing, cloth work, alchemy, I'll come back to that. Comes from well equipped those interested in blacksmithing, cloth work, and alchemy and cooking. Over the next couple of years, as Cormac grew older and weaker, a young man named Chadwick, probably going to change that because I kind of have a feeling that he might be a tiefling. Then again, it could be Brent Chadwick. I'll play with that name. Young man named Brent Chadwick stay. He got talking to the wizard and agreed to stay on for stay on at the homestead. Price of a free meal. Free meals. And he helped Cormac look after the homestead. Cleaning. No. All of the basic duties required for taking care of the house was looked after by Brent. Was looked after by Brent, and in the final days of Cormac's life, he signed the house over to Brent with legal instructions to continue the homestead and provide the retreat. For and continue to provide the retreat. Okay. What I'm then thinking after that is, with Varcon being a port town, I would say that the homestead, the land that it's on, would have been quite close to the coast, but it would have still been far enough away that, should there have been a high tide at the time, that the house would be perfectly safe. But that being said, I feel in the few years after Cormac's death, I don't know why I capitalised that, in a few years after Cormac's death, Brent went about building a pier at the coast, and this offered fishing opportunities. Can't spell today. Offered fishing opportunities to those who stayed here. This also allowed him to take on a couple of people to help out. So we've kind of got the basic history of what happened when it was a homestead. Going from a homestead, I think that Varcon would have become a small village. Area around it, we're talking some real good distances here. The city of Varcon, the homestead at this point, would have been about would appear at the end of the coast, that sat about a mile south of the homestead. So it would still be within the grounds of the homestead. Went about building a pier at the coast, sat about a mile south of the homestead, and this offered fishing opportunities to those who stayed here. This time take on a couple of people to help out with the day-to-day. With the day-to-day duties. The addition of the pier also allowed allowed for them to open a fishing trade route and raise the cost of staying at the homestead. Okay, so now that I've thought that he's kind of opened a fishing trade route, okay, so over the next 5 years, might change that a little bit. Over the next 5 years, more and more people came to visit the homestead, and during that time, other settlers made agreements with Brent, which allowed them to build their own homes on the surrounding lands. This then grew what was a large house into a small village that over the course of the next 20 years would grow to a bustling town. Okay, so just from one fishing trade route, you had these settlers come through. You then have with the help of those of previous patrons returning to set up shop, at the place to set up shop here, their business grew. The settlers here drummed up tourism and put the town on the map. So far I've kept this nice and happy, I suppose, clean and happy. We're going to change that. At around 25 years. Hang on. Around 13 years after the homestead began to grow into the self-sufficient village, there was a Jewish woman by the name of Rheticus Bellyhide. Okay. Jewish woman by the name of Rheticus Bellyhide. That's a mouthful when you got stuck. She used to have a store in the next town over, but the growing popularity of this small village had put her out of business. As a result, she hired a group of mercenaries to deal with her problem. This unfortunately spelling really isn't my strong point, I do apologise. This unfortunately led to the untimely death of Brent and the people we worked with, as well as a number of the villagers. From here, Repticis would run the village how she saw fit, which clearly must have been 50 foot underground, which is where the village ended up before the villagers themselves revolted and killed her and her mercenaries that had set up shop here too. Over the next 5 years, the village would grow again back to its former reputation. I realised 150 to 200 years history for this city is not going to be enough. So I'm going to write up what I'm just going to keep with the flow, and then I'm going to come back to it and decide from there in terms of timings, etc. I think that's going to be the best thing to do. So for the next 5 years, the village will grow again back to its former reputation. At this point, it was decided that a formal council should be made, and the original council was made up of 6 members, each with initials enough to form the village name of Varcon. Okay, that is not the most original way of getting the name in there, but it's the one I thought of, so it's the one I'm going to go for. From here, Varcon with its newly found. It did used to have a name before, Varcon, but I'm not trying to think of that name right now. With its newly found reputation, would continue its economical growth over the next 60 years. During this time, it drew the attention of many traders, both land and sea, as well as religious sects. The economy here grew through trade and tourism, and it unintentionally became a trading gateway and grew into the city that we know and love today. So again, this isn't the most in-depth history, but being brutally honest, I don't really want it that in-depth. As I say, one thing with my world building is I like to get it to a point where I can have a little bit of history and just roll with it. You know, I now know, and certain players in the party, particularly one in general, will know the history, will know that it was a simple homestead, will know that through the goodness of an old man's heart, that it became a retreat for tradespeople. It then grew into a fishing retreat, as well as a trader's retreat. That attracted people. They wanted to build houses. It became a village, it became a town, it became a city. You know, just from one decision that Brent made, which was to build a pier, we now have this big port city. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, and I am going to refresh it, and then there is all the history. All that history is there for us. So one thing I'm going to do as well is I'm just going to go back down to history, and just that's history. I'm just going to bring that all the way down, because that bit and that bit can go. Okay, that's where we're at the minute. Okay, the next part that I want to cover off in this episode is the government, so the council. I really want to get down to that. So, there we go. So I want to get down with the government. At some point, whether that is in this episode or in a future episode, because I do think Varcon's going to take 2 episodes, is districts. Explain what each district is for. Kind of where I want to go with it. With the government then. So, City of Varcon is governed by a council of elected politicians. Each councilman governs a specific part of the Varconian government. Their job is to keep Varcon running like a well-oiled machine. The trade route's moving and the citizens as alive as best as they can. Okay, so what I'm also going to say is, and I'm just going to note form this because I think with the government and the council bit, I think I'm kind of going to have to take that offline and just kind of neaten it up. I'm going to go through and just chuck some crap at this section. So what I'm going to say is the Council of Varcon also has another D20. Oh, okay, I'm going to go 17. Okay, has another 17 villages in its jurisdiction. Did I spell that right? Oh no, I got it right. Okay. Also has another 17 villages in its jurisdiction. The council will oversee the is in charge of making sure that not only Varcon runs smooth, but its representatives in each village also aids the running of its own village and helps whenever it can towards the Varconian economy, which in turn helps the Morbian economy. Okay, when it comes to economy, I am not delving too far into that because unless it comes up in a session, economy is going to be something that is going to be far too big than my tiny little brain can handle. So I ain't going to touch it. The roles. In fact, actually, I'm gonna can't put a header in this corner. I think. Yeah, the roles and no, hang on. The roles within the Varconian Council. I think header 1 was too big, so I'm gonna go header 2. Header 3? No? Okay, so I will try that in fact actually. No, never mind. Yeah. The roles of the Okay, so we're going to go with the roles in the council. So we have got the Counsellor of the Sea, who oversees the docks, dockside market, and all of the imports, exports, and trade coming in via sea. Counsellor of Land Commerce, Counsellor of the Sea Commerce, that's what I'm going to say. Counsellor of the Land Commerce, who oversees the day-to-day running of the trade through the city, the North Market. I will have to come up with a new name for the two different marketplaces, the North Market and down the trade routes. Down the trade route to the. I feel like it needs a name. We're talking about, you know, like a 3 mile long road and then it just splits off like 5 or 6 different ways, or 4, 5, 6 different ways. So I feel like that needs a name. What could I call it? I'm just going to call it the Funnel for now. Although it seems like a good name, to be fair. So we've got Sea Commerce, Land Commerce, Counsellor of what could this one be? Okay, so we've got the Counsellor of Sea Commerce, Counsellor of Land Commerce. Next we have got the Counsellor of Religion. Religions. I might think of a better name for that. Who oversees the temple, oversees both the temple of Beam and the temple of Bahamut. I'm probably spelling his name wrong. I do apologise if I am, and more than likely am. But essentially the reason I include Bahamut is simply because... Oh no, I didn't. I did spell it right. Never mind. Yeah, so one of my players is a Dragonborn guard captain within the Varconian military, and essentially he came from slavery, etc. I'm not going to give you all this backstory, but essentially came to Varcon, rose within the ranks. He's a very much well-known, well-loved captain of the guard. He has turned prolific criminals into upstanding pillars of the community, and he and a couple of others set up the Temple of Bahamut within Varcon. Now the temple itself, I mean, he's building it himself. I always get my players to kind of have an input on the world building, so he's building the Temple of Bahamut for me. But essentially he runs it out of an old house, a rather large house, but an old house nonetheless. Simply because when he approached the council, kind of pitched his idea, it was basically said, look, we can't afford to build another temple. So a couple of weeks later, I was going down the street, whatever, came across this empty house. Said, right, you can't build me a temple, but can I have that house? Bish bash bosh, he got it and set up the temple. That's essentially the idea I'm going with. Not necessarily the idea I've been able to speak to my player about, but that's kind of what I'm going with for the Bahamut Temple. But he's building that for me, so we'll have a chat around that later on down the line. So that's sea commerce, land commerce, religions. I suppose since we're just talking about gods, Counsellor of I don't want to say military defences. Oversees the guard movement and defences of Varcon, both land and sea. So defences is something I'm going to have a think about, but straight off the top of my head, I'm definitely thinking some sort of railgun technology, kind of pointing out to sea. So if there were pirates or anything like that, it's literally just lock and load, bish bash bosh, shoot them down. But obviously when it comes to technology, there's a few things that I haven't quite thought of yet, and kind of weaponry is one of them. So I'm going to say that although it's a railgun, it's kind of a high-tech ballista? That's not the right word. You know, like massive crossbow. That's kind of what I'm going for. Ballista? Is it called a ballista? That's going to bug me now. Yeah, ballista. Okay, yeah. So kind of something like that, but kind of a high-tech. Maybe the Varcon government had a few people working on it, and you know, since this one kind of looks like you've got two, so one goes in there, shoots out, well, that one goes, and you know, that kind of works itself out, where it can shoot out multiple at one go. So maybe there's a way of that the Tinkers or Artificers or whatever have kind of built something that will fire multiple projectiles at once. I don't know. That's again something I'll have to think about further on down the line. But we've got the sea commerce, the land commerce, the religion, the defences. What else have we got? Counsellor of... I'm really not spelling right today. Counsellor of Housing? No. Of Living. Oversees housing situation, and has a hand in the spending of the Varconian coffers. On top of that, we have then got Counsellor of Education. Including the title, oversees the education of adults and children. Okay. I do feel like, considering the actual history of where the origins of Varcon came from, you know, this homestead, it's like, right, I don't care whether you are a tailor or you want to be a tailor. Whether you've done it before, you've never touched it, you want to learn, you know a little bit, you just want to develop, whatever. Cormac basically gave these people a place to do that. You know, essentially he kick-started adult learning in this particular area of Morbia. So I think that based on that, the Counsellor of Education would not just be for children, it would also include adults. Oversees the education of adults through apprenticeships. Okay, so we have now got our Counsellor of Sea Commerce, Counsellor of Land Commerce, Religions, Defences, Living, Education. That makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 counsellors. I reckon with Living, this counsellor also oversees the medical sector of the city, because I feel like we do need to include that. Cool. So for tonight we have managed to complete the history of Varcon. We have managed to complete who the council are. The last thing I want to do before I end the video here, the members of the council are elected every 7 years. They are elected through political campaigns and can only run for one spot. So for example, they cannot conduct a campaign to be Counsellor for Sea Commerce, to be able to be elected for either Counsellor for Sea Commerce and or Counsellor for Education. One or they can only become one. Okay, so that kind of tops off how are they elected, who are they, and what do they do. Who do they report to is the final thing I am definitely going to cover off, and then we're going to end this episode there. So the council report into the King of Morbia. King of Morbia, who reigns streams from is through in the four spires. And in fact, what I'm going to do on that one is I'm going to settlement. So I'm already going to mark that. Okay, and there we go. And I was kind of hoping that would automatically made, or has it, and I'm just being thick. There's your government. No, it isn't the government where I put it, wasn't it? Yeah, yes, it has made it. That's fine. So now what I've got to do is give it a quick refresh. Yes, nice big long article for it. So now I can click on Varcon. We were at 351 words beforehand. We are now at 1265 words. I think that is a resounding success for a no. And that's where we're going to leave it. My next episode is going to be around the creation of a memory stealing humanoid creature, which is going to be extremely important in the first part of my campaign. So I would like to thank you for joining me this evening. So I could just ask, if you did like the video, just drop me a like and a subscribe, hit the bell to know when I'm uploading more content, and yeah, thanks for tuning in, and see you all later.